It has been a very long time. Oh, this will be fun. It's been a while since I've been on a stream. Is everybody ready? I sure hope you are. Hello, Inspect. Alright. Let me simply get everything ready. Just had to turn on my ring light. Aspect, do you mind posting on Twitter and maybe in the Discord that we're going live? And I'll do the same for Twitter. Alright. Let me just get this last thing uploaded. And now we may begin. Okay. This is a very, very large book. Acknowledgements. The editor would like to thank all the people whose cooperation and dedication to unspeakable horrors has made this book possible. First, our thanks go to that nameless monk who presented us with the original and who has since disappeared. Second, to that, the ever-changing staff of translators who performed a most distasteful and oft-times unsatisfying tasks. To Miss I. Selms, Miss N. Papaspiro, Mr. Peter Lavenda, Mr. X, and Mr. Y. Third, to Miss J. McNally, whose thorough knowledge and understanding of craft folklore aided the editor in assuming a proper perspective towards this work. Fourth, to Mr. J. Birnbaum, who aided in some of the preliminary practical research concerning the powers of the book and its dangers. Fifth, to Mr. L.K. Barnes, who dared to tempt the awesome wrath of the Ancient Ones, risking unspeakable eldritch horrors in supporting the publication of this arcane treatise. Sixth, to all those patient pagans and friends to the craft who waited and waited for the eventual publication of this tome with bated breath. And something on the stove. Seventh, and perhaps most importantly, to Ermin Slater of the magical child Nee Warlock Shop, whose constant encouragement and eternal kvetching was material to the completion of this work. And finally to the demon Peruduabdo, without whose help the presentation of this book would have been impossible. Blessed be. Preface to the 4th edition. This edition marks 31 years since the original publication of the Necronomicon on December 1st, 1977. 31 has a special significance in the system of Kabbalah, known as Gematria, a kind of sacred numerology. In Gematria, 31 is the numerical equivalent to the Hebrew word for God. It is also the equivalent to the Hebrew word for beating, striking, and collision, Haka, according to the book Sefer Sephiroth. One may think it odd that the word for God should somehow be equivalent to a word for an act of violence, unless of course one were to consider the Old Testament God, who was never short on smiting someone or something. Instead, perhaps, we should look to the Greek gematria for some further clarification. After all, the word Necronomicon is Greek, and its own gematria is 555, a number that has resonance, and it also equals desire, lust, epithumia, foundation, image, idruma, as well as the separation, division, diacrisis. According to the Karen Barry's authoritative work, the Greek Kabbalah, the Thelemites will no longer recognize that Thelemites will no doubt recognize that 555 equals words for both desire and lust on one side, and separation and division on the other. A subtle reference perhaps to Liberal, and its verse, "For I am divided for love's sake, for the chance of union." Al I-29. The Necronomicon is then an image of this subtle alchemical principle, if not its very foundation. In Greek, the number 31 has only one reference. In Barry's work, and that is the word for and, kai. Kai is also the word for especially. Thus, this anniversary edition of the Necronomicon is not the end of a sentence, but the connection between two separate clauses, between a fascinating past and a darkly mysterious future. We must acknowledge the contribution of those who have gone before us in this work. The late Larry Barnes, to whom this edition is dedicated, has pride of place for so many reasons. Oh, I am quiet. Thank you for letting me know. Is this better? Is this better? I would hope so. Sorry, I kind of got a bit too into the book right there. Alright, perfect. Those who have read the previous editions of the Necronomicon and my history of the book in Dead Names will recognize his name and contribution to the publication of the very first edition, and all the hardcover editions since then. Larry's spirit has hovered over this project since its inception, and we can clearly hear his voice even now, inserting his influence over the final product, making sure that the right ink, paper, and binding has been selected in this exact specification, joking and speaking in comic book word balloons as he hovers over our shoulders. But there have been others, too many others, who have joined Larry in the Summerland, and as prematurely. This list, this catalogue of dead names, includes Herman Slater of the Warlock Shop and the Magical Child bookstore, who distributed the first editions of the Necronomicon through his shop. Martin Mensch, an occultist who worked on the system, who was gunned down by a ricochet in the New York East Village. Bonnie Claremont, designer of occult jewelry and charter member of Star Group, one who succumbed to a devastating illness. Jerry Birnbaum, another occultist and Freemason. Judith McNally, another charter member of Star Group 1, who's perished from lung cancer, to Eddie Bukizny, Herman Slater's partner and the founder of the Minoan Initiation. And most recently to Jim No Coats Garvey. These were the individuals who spearheaded what has become known as the occultant renaissance in New York City and in the 1970s and 1980s. These are some of the names of the dead, but they live with us, dead but dreaming. The dream of spiritual liberation that is our duty to realize not only for ourselves but for the human race. Once every 1,000 years, humanity goes through a collective anxiety attack that anthropologists call the Chiliastic, or millennial panic. Something about round numbers frightens people, and the turn of the century or a millennium brings with it a dire sense of foreboding. Fundamentalist Christians lug out their Bibles and point with horror to unintelligible references to the final days. Other prophets get visions of a monstrous deity descending in a flaming chariot or other echastical spacecraft to judge the living and the dead. Others assess the numbers of people, 144,000, who will be left out of all the rest of their neighbors to enjoy whatever pious pursuits a blanched paradise amidst angelic choirs and a God with a mincing smile can bring. With all said worry and neurosis, this communal church of the living dead again trots out the worn and slightly rumpled figure of the Antichrist, its face and features frayed and frazzled like a favorite T-shirt. The beast whose number is that of a man, feminists take note, 666. One need only take some time to study the history of Chileism to find that Kaiser Wilhelm, of First World War fame, was considered by many to be the Antichrist, though few remember him now. Later it manifested in popular imagination as such unlikely badfellows as Sigmund Freud, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, IBM, and Mao Zedong, not counting whoever it was that first came up with the idea to chlorinate drinking water. Aleister Crowley himself took the appellation to heart and called himself the Antichrist before anyone who could claim the honor. With this, the third edition of the Necronomicon in a little over 3 years, and we are at the very edge of another millennial freakout. The 1980s promised to be a decade of craziness, and the 1990s will be even more fun. Owners and users of the Necronomicon will be well prepared to deal with both the social and the spiritual unrest that will accompany the turning of the pages of the calendar of chronicle depression, and that will take the place of these troubling times. The secret of the Antichrist, the Beast 666, if you will, is hidden within these covers, and as it is hidden within each one of us. The interface between the Necronomicon software and your own personal hardware will reveal the demonic computer for what it really is, the machine that will bring out the era of liberation for every sentient being. Preface to the second edition. There are 3 major individuals who must share the credit for the astonishingly good reception of the Necronomicon has enjoyed over the last 2 years since its publication. L.K. Barnes was lured into the Magical Child bookstore in Manhattan one day by an incarnated thought form we may only refer to by his initials B.A.K. Both were in search of some casual amusement from the slightly distorted version of the supernatural intelligence dissemination that usually took place on those premises. Sorry, I am quite sick right now, so it does make reading this a little bit tougher. Ever setting foot or tentacle inside those clammy precincts, for the crazed proprietor of that institution commenced to wave before him the manuscript copy of this book, thereby securing his soul forever in the service of the elder gods. Needless to say, L.K., a long-time pilgrim in the search for the genuine Necronomicon, which he knew since childhood really existed, was suitably impressed. Shocked, actually, he was asked by the dubious personality who claimed responsibility for the editing and general research that went into this volume. This exotic individual, Simon by name, appeared suddenly one day at the living quarters of L.K. Barnes, attired in the beret, a suit of the dark fibrous material, and an attached case which contained, besides correspondence from various Balkan embassies, and a photograph of the F-104 fighter being crafted up for shipment at Luxembourg, additional material on the Necronomicon which proved his bona fides. Also at the meeting was the third member of the Unholy Trinity, James Wesserman of Studio 31, who, according to a South American cult leader, died during the last year, but who has been able, with some assistance from the Stone of the Wise and certain other formulae in this book, to go on about business like unto a living man. With Simon's manuscript Bond's occult vision and aesthetic scruples as Wasserman's production experience and tireless labor, the abhorred Necronomicon began to take shape, and the first edition smote with stands on December 22nd, 1977. The ancient pagan feast of Yule, the winter solstice, yet not without a number of bizarre occurrences that more than once threatened the lives, the sanity, and the astral bodies of the three individuals most deeply involved. Jim Wasserman was subjected to what we may vaguely refer to as poltergeistic activity during the time he worked on production and design aspects of the book. A room which, for certain loathsome purposes, was always kept locked, and was found one day to have been opened from the inside. In the same building, just below his loft, the typesetters were set upon by swarms of rats. The discovery of a small Hindu idol that had been lost signaled the end to the plague, and the rats disappeared. Simon usually lives in fear of his life, for reasons that do not always have to do with the Necronomicon. However, he has always been subject to constant surveillance by the Ancient Ones. They await the one slip, the single misstep that will provide for them the entry to that they earnestly desire into this world. L.K. Barnes, on the other hand, had no rest, whatever from the signals and messages from the extraterrestrial intelligences that were the overseers and the guardians of this book publication. He has been plagued by an unremitting chain of numerological events which he cannot ignore. The predominance of the numbers 13, 333, 555, 666, and others too arcane to bear mentioning have made his life a demonstration, of Jungian's synchronity repatterns. Also, his printing of the beautiful full-colored Dendera Zodiac on the first anniversary of the Necronomicon's publication in 1978 precipitated a rash of UFO sightings in Australia, New Zealand, in which one pilot has disappeared. Bizarre occurrences and humongous coincidences aside for the moment, the Necronomicon has caused damages in the consciousness of those people who intimately involved with it, as well as many strangers who simply bought the book through the mail or at their bookstore. Judging by the letters we have received the last 2 years, these changes have been startling. Many have found the book's magic to work and work extremely well. Others, once attempted certain of the rituals, felt compelled to retire from the occult scene. And of course, judging by that, for lengthy periods of time, the mere fact that the book was generally considered never to have existed, and then found to exist after all, is itself a powerful psychic influence. Fantasy come true, a dream realized in waking life. The quest for a lifetime search come to an end. The ultimate book of spells, the godfather of grimoires. Therefore it is with an awe, with something akin to dread, that I address this second edition to the courageous reader of the Necronomicon. The beast has told us I am the warrior, lord of the 40s, the 80s, cower before me and are abased. AL 11146. This edition of the Necronomicon is scheduled for early delivery in February 1980, making it possibly the first occult book of the 80s, a herald of doom, or a harbinger of fate. Since the publication of this book in December 1977, the ancient forces of erstwhile victory have been banging and clamming spree on the 44 caliber killer known as the Press at the Sun membership in a satanic cult in Yonkers. Several months after people killed themselves in Guyana at the orders of a crazed religious leader, several months after that, the leader of a mystical Islamic sect seized power in Iran, and at the time of this writing is calling for a holy war against the infidel. There is evidence that every new age witnesses a baptism by fire. Christians and Muslims are turning on each other and themselves. Israel is once again in serious jeopardy. Buddhism is being eradicated in Southeast Asia and was in Tibet. Ancient ones, lords of a time before memory, are being drawn to by the smell of confusion and the hysteria and mutual hatred of these primitive life forms on the planet. Human beings, unless the gates, are secured against attack, unless humanity awakens to both the real danger and the real potential for revolution. While the vision of the mad Arab, ancestor of the Muslim princes, so much in the news 1979 to 80, is one certainly of terror. The discovery of this book, however, like the discovery of the typesetter's idol, may be the key, the link in our defense against the possible enemy awaiting us. Outside events of the last 2 years have shown us. As I was reading that, my light went out. Hold on. That totally wasn't terrifying. Hold on. Let me adjust my microphone a little bit now that I have a free couple seconds. Is one certainly of terror. The discovery of this book, however, is like the discovery of the typesetter's idol, may be the key in the link in our defense against the possible enemy awaiting us. Outside events of the last 2 years have shown us that the book is also an amulet, a protective shield that guards its own from the machinations of evil, extraterrestrial or primevally elemental alien beings or subconscious repressions. They are powerless against us if we consider deeply the message of this book and take the seeming rantings of the Arab at face value for what they are: a warning, a weapon, and a wisdom. With these three we enter the new age, the crowned conquering child Horus, not in a slouch towards Bethlehem, but born within us at the moment we conquer the lurking fear in our own souls. Is everybody ready to delve? Give me a second. I'm back. There we go. In the mid-1920s, roughly 2 blocks from where the Warlock shop once stood, in Brooklyn Heights lived a quiet, reclusive man, an author of short stories, who eventually divorced his wife of 2 years and returned to his boyhood home in Rhode Island, where he lived with his 2 aunts, born on August 20th, 1980. 1890, Howard Phillips Lovecraft would come to exert an impact on the literary world that dwarfs his initial successes with Weird Tales magazine in 1923. He died tragically at the age of 46 on March 15th, 97, on March 15th, 37 of the year 1900. He died tragically at the age of 46, March 15th, 1937, a victim of cancer at the intestines and Bright's disease. Though persons of such renown as Daniel Hammett were to become involved in this work, anthropologizing it for publication, both here and abroad, and reputation of a man generally conceded to be the father of Gothic horror, and did not really come into his own until the past few years. In the same year that Lovecraft found print in the pages of Weird Tales, another gentleman was seeing his name in print, but in the British tabloid press, new sinister revelations of Aleister Crowley. Read the front page of the Sunday Express, and it concerned testimony by one of the notorious magician's former followers. Wife of one of his followers, that Crowley had been responsible for the death of her husband in the Abbey of Thelema in Cephalus, Sicily. The bad press, plus the imagined threat of secret societies, finally forced Mussolini to deport the great beast from Italy. Tales of horror filled the pages of the newspapers in England for weeks and months to come. Satanic rituals, black masses, animal sacrifice, and even human sacrifices were reported, or blatantly lied about. For although many of the stories were simply not true or fanciful exaggeration, one thing was for certain. Aleister Crowley was a magician in one of the First Order. Born on October 12th, 1875, in England, in the same country as Shakespeare, Edward Alexander Crowley grew up in a strict fundamentalist religious family. Members of a sect called the Plymouth Brethren. The first person to call him by that name and number, which he would become famous after the reference in the Book of Revelation. The Beast 666 was his mother, and he eventually took this appellation to heart. He changed his name to Aleister Crowley while still at Cambridge, and by that name, plus 666, he would never be long out of print or out of the newspapers, for he believed himself to be the incarnation of a god, an ancient one, the vehicle of a new age of man's history, the Aeon of Horus, displacing the old age of Osiris. In 1904, he had received a message from what Lovecraft might have called out of space, that contained the formula for a new world order, a new system of philosophy, a new system of science, art, and religion. But this new order had to begin with the fundamental part and the common denominator of all four, magic. In 1937, the year Lovecraft died, the Nazis banned the occult lodges of Germany. Notable among them, two organizations which Crowley supervised, the AA and the OTO, the latter of which he was elected head in for England, and the former which he founded himself. There are those who believe that Crowley was somehow magically responsible for the Third Reich, for two reasons. One was the emergence of New World Orders generally seems to instigate holocausts, and two, that he is said to have influenced the mind of Adolf Hitler. While it is almost certain that Crowley and Hitler never met, it is known that Hitler belonged to several occult lodges in the early days after the First War. The symbol of one of these, the Thule-Gesellschaft, which presaged a doctrine of the Aryan racial was infamous swastika, the symbol of the Third Reich, that Crowley only despised Nazism in all its forms, however, is evident in many of his writings, notably the essays written in the 30s. Crowley seemed to regard the Nazi phenomenon as a creature of Christianity, in its anti-Semitism and severe moral restrictions concerning its adherents, which led to various types of lunacies and hang-ups that characterized many of the Reich's leadership. Yet there can be perhaps little doubt that the chaos that engulfed the world in those years was prefigured and predicted in Crowley's Liber vel Legis, the Book of the Law. The mythos and the magic. We can profitably compare the essence of most of Lovecraft's short stories with the basic themes of Crowley's unique system of ceremonial magic. While the latter was a sophisticated psychological structure intended to being the initiate to contact with his higher self, via a process of individualization that is active and dynamic, being brought about by the patient himself, as opposed to the passive depths of analysis as the Jungian adepts Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos was meant for entertainment. Scholars, of course, are able to find higher ulterior motives in Lovecraft's writing, and can be done with any manifestation of art. Lovecraft depicted a kind of Christian myth as the struggle between opposing forces of light and darkness, between God and Satan in the Cthulhu mythos. Some critics may complain that this smacks more of the Manichaean heresy than it does of the genuine Christian dogma. Yet, as a priest and former monk, I believe it is fair to say that the dogma is unfortunately very far removed from the majority of the faithful to be of much consequences. The idea of a war against Satan and of the entities of good and evil having roughly equivalent powers is perhaps best illustrated by the belief common among the Orthodox churches of the East in a personal devil as well as a personal angel. This concept has been amplified by the Roman Catholic Church to such an extent, perhaps subconsciously, that a missal in the editor's possession contains an engraving for the feast of St. Andrew's Apostle for November 30th that bears the legend Et qui tollis peccatat mundi. Behold him who taketh away the sins of the world. And the picture above it is the atomic bomb. Basically, there are two sets of gods in the mythos. The elder gods, about whom not much is revealed, save that they are a stellar race that occasionally comes to the rescue of man, and which corresponds to the Christian light. And the ancient ones, about which much is told, sometimes in great detail, who correspond to darkness. These latter are the evil gods who wish nothing but ill for the race of man, and who constantly strive to break into our world through a gate or door that leads from the outside in. There are certain people among us who are devotees of the Ancient Ones, who try to open the gate so that this evidently repulsive organization may once again rule the earth. Chief among these is Cthulhu, typified as a sea monster dwelling in the great deep, a sort of primeval ocean, a being that Lovecraft collaborator August Derleth wrongly calls a water elemental. There is also Azathoth, the blind idiot god of chaos, Yog-Sothoth, Azathoth's partner in chaos, Shub-Niggurath, the goat with 1,000 young, and others. They appear at various times throughout the stories and the Cthulhu mythos in frightening forms which test the strength and resourcefulness of their protagonists in their attempts to push the hellish things back to whence they came. There is an overriding sense of primitive fear and cosmic terror in those pages, as though man is dealing with something that threatens other than his physical safety. A very spiritual nature. His horror cosmology is extended by the frequent appearance of this book, Necronomicon. The Necronomicon is, according to Lovecraft's tales, a volume written in Damascus in the 8th century AD by a person called the Mad Arab, Abdul al-Hazred. It must run around 800 pages in length, as there is a personal reference in one of the stories concerning some lacunae on a page in the 700s. It had been copied and reprinted in various languages, the story goes, among them Latin, Greek, and English. Dr. Dee, the magus of Elizabethan fame, was supposed to have possessed a copy and translated it. This book, according to the mythos, appears the formulae for evoking incredible things into visible appearance, being monsters, prey, which dwell in the abyss and outer space of the human psyche, which books have existed in fact and do exist. Idris Shah tells of his search he conducted for a copy of the Book of Power by the Arab magician Abd al-Qadir. See The Secret Lore of Magic by Shah, of which only one copy has ever been found. The Keys of Solomon had a similar reputation, as did the Magus by the Beret, until all of these works were eventually reprinted in the last 15 years or so. The Golden Dawn, a famous British and American occult lodge of the turn of the century, was said to have possessed a manuscript called The Veils of Negative Existence, by another Arab, of course. These were the sorcerer's handbooks, and generally not meant as textbooks or encyclopedias of ceremonial magic. In other words, the sorcerer or magician is supposed to be in possession of the requisite knowledge and training with which to carry out a complex magical ritual, just as a cook is expected to be able to master the scrambling of eggs before he conjures an Eggs Benedict. The grimoires or black books were simply variations on a theme like cookbooks, different records of what previous magicians had done, the spirits they had contacted, and the successes they had. Now magicians who now read these works are expected to be able to select from the wheat and the chaff in much the same fashion as an alchemist discerning to deliberate errors on a treatise in his subject. Hold on, I think I'm actually on the wrong pages. No, I'm in the correct page. Hold on, my neck hurts. I'm going to stretch a bit. In Greek, the original MS, a common incantation would look something like this, using Roman characters for the Greek. O kakostheus, o kakostheusmon, o daimon, pneumatorono themulete, pneumatis githimulente. O wicked god, O wicked demon, O demon spirit of the sky, remember, spirit of the earth, remember. Yet a word like Shamash, the name of the solar deity, would rime as Samas or Samas. And in the text of the Necronomicon, we would use the correct transliteration phonetic, which would make the word read like its original. The conjuration of the Watcher follows the fire god conjuration. The word Watcher is sometimes used synchronously with angel, and sometimes as a distinct race apart from Angelus egregori. The race of Watchers are said not to care what they watch, save that they follow orders. They are somewhat mindless creatures, but quite effective. Perhaps they correspond to Lovecraft's Shoggoths, save the latter became unwieldy and difficult to manage. After the Watcher comes the Malku, text which appears to be a collection of exorcisms which includes the famous Zilka Bessa Bessa incantation in the original, to which a translation has been appended in this work. A translation evidently not at hand when the author compiled the MS. Thus, for the first time, this much rumored exorcism is available in full English. A chart of comparisons showing some relationships to be found between the mythos of Lovecraft, the magic of Rowley, and the faith of Sumer. Crowley, the great beast, Sumer, Cthulhu, in Lovecraft, Cthulhu. In Lovecraft, there are many gods, the ancient ones, Azazoth, the Dunwich Horror, Shub-Niggurath, out of space, IA, the five-pointed grey star cavern, and Vermis Mysteris. For Crowley, it was Satan, or Taton, Iowas, Coronzon, Pan, the Abyss, Io, or Aiao, the Pentagram, and the Serpent. And for Sumer, Tiamat, Azagthoth, Pazuzu, Shub-Ishni-Garab, Absuna-Matar, Ai, Lord of Waters, the Ya or Ub plow sign, the original pentagram, and the sign of the Aryan race. Aram, the enemy, and the sea as chaos. This is, of course, by no means a complete list, but rather an inspirational, sampling mediation upon the various things mentioned in the mythos will permit the scholar to draw his own conclusions. Research upon the etymology of both Lovecraft and Crowley's respective literature enables the occultist to discover the ancient names and numbers from much of his own familiar material. Note that Lovecraft may have heard of Crowley is hinted at darkly in his short story, The Thing on the Doorstep, in which he refers to a cult leader from England who had established a covenstead of sorts in New York. In that story, published in Weird Tales 1936, the cult leader is closely identified with chthonic forces. He is described as notorious, and linked to the strange fate that befell the protagonist, Edward Derby. Supplementary material to 777. The chart that follows is based on research presently available to the editor with regard to Sumerian and Assyro-Babylonian religions. Entries, in parentheses, refer to the state of correspondence before the advent of the elder gods, the race of Marduk. That is, it reflects the nature of the cosmos before the fall of Marduk. From heaven, names of zodiacal constellations are after Budge's renderings. Table VIIAC and Table XXVS. 0. Tiamat. 1. Enlil. 2. Enki. 3. Adar. 4. Marduk. 5. Nergal. 6. Hutu. 7. Inanna. 8. Nebo. 9. Nanna. 10. Kia. 11. Anna. 12. Gudud. 13. Sin. 14. Dliabat. 15. Argu. 16. Kabap. Yululap. Shem. 17. Ryokinu Shemu Tuame Rabuti. 18. Ishitu. 19. Gabu Rabu. 20. Shiru. 22. Zibanshim. 23. Badur. 24. Akrabu. 25. Pabil Sag. 26. Saxor Mush. 27. Mustabaru and Gula. 28. The Horn Beast. 29. Dilganurikis Nuni. 30. Shamash. 31. Ag. 32. Kaimanu. 32. Kia. 31. Z. We absolutely cannot be certain on how Sumerian and Akkadian were spoken, but many useful guidelines are available to the student, including the transliterated tablets found all over Mesopotamia. Basically, we can offer the following principles, which should prove valuable in reciting the foreign language of instructions. Vowels: A as in father, E as in Hui, I as in antique, O as in boat, U as in Zulu. Consonants, most are basically the same as in English. The Sumerians did not have an alphabet as we know it, but they developed a syllabary, very much like the Japanese kana script of today. In phonetic alliterations, the English spelling sought to approximate the Sumerian pronunciation. However, there are few pounds which English does not possess, and which have been put into phonetic versions. Such important examples are below. X as in the German ach, Eich, or ch. Q as in like. K is the same as above. Sh as in shawl. S as in lasso. Hissing S, common to Arabic language. Z as in lots. A hard S sound, not quite as in zoo. Remember, in the transliterations which follow, every letter must be pronounced. There are no schwas or silent syllables in Sumerian. Hence, Kia is pronounced Kia. Kaimanu is Kaimanu. Or if spoken rapidly, the two initial vowels sound slur into Kai, rhyming with high. The incarnations, which should be said carefully and slowly at first, to familiarize oneself with the tongue-twisting phrases, a mistake may prove fatal to the work. Where possible, the editor has taken every opportunity to find the original Sumerian or Akkadian translations to the Greek charms or conjurations. These will be given here also. The reader will find English translations of the Sumerian charms as they are given in the Necronomicon. Not all of the charms are available in this way, and sometimes we have had to make do with near misses. Much of what is found here that has come from the Malku text, but of which the only extant translation is in the German of Talkvit, Diashvieth Eisirsk, Beschworungsserie, Maclure Nash Dam Originalum im British Museum Herbighorgesbersum, Acta Societatis Scientiarum Fenisse, Tom XX number 6, Hellingse Forse Minsk. The word Malku, or Maku, itself is controversial, but Halkvist seems to think that it does indeed mean burning, especially so as the incantations to be found therein invariably entail burning something, usually a doll made in the likeness of a witch or evil sorcerer that the magician wished to dispose of. Hence, we have here probably the archetype of the great burning times of the Inquisition, when people were condemned to burn a fiery death as witches and pagans. The chant "burn, witch, burn" can be found in the Malku text in all its pristine glory. Indeed, Cthulhu calls. The binding of the evil sorcerers. Elsi kunushi ilani mushiti, itikunu elsi mushitum, galatum katutum, katumtum, alsi bareshim, cohabitim, yonamiatum, ashushu, kashpatu, yokashimani, elinitum nubarani, lilia yishteri, ya ushis usuelialia, eliamani ya amru hushanku. Imdirku salala mashaurala, quaumimnieta, upunti peaya, iprusu, mimashetius, mashtitiuia, omatu, elianubo, o zitipiti, zispiti, izinamiasne, ilani rabuti, shimale davida, dinidma alakati limdae bush salam kashapi u kashpati sha epishia u mushtipiasia izma separati sha mushin lipshoru ruksisha lumnuti pisha luzu azalu lushun nusha lu tabtu sha ikbu umati limitu in iakami zazu litatuk sha ipshu kishpi kima tabzi lizyamit kiyashruru pu uturu ishupet zuluk kal matarashu mala siagi inik kivitikbu ualanish mushitium. The conjuration Zilka Besa Besa, or a most excellent charm against the hordes of demons. Arise, arise, go far away, be shamed, flee, flee. Turn around, go, arise and go far away. Your wickedness may rise to heaven like unto smoke. Arise and leave my body. From my body depart in shame, from my body flee. Turn away from my body. Go away from my body. Do not return to my body. Do not come near. Do not approach. Do not throng around my body. Be commanded by Shamash the Almighty. Be commanded by Enki, Lord of all. Be commanded by Marduk, the great magician of the gods. Be commanded by the god of fire, your destroyer. May you be held back from my body. Another binding of the sorceress. Salmoniae ana pagri takbita dupira salmoniae ana pagri taksir deputa salmoniae hiti pagri tushni ila dupira samanimi ishti pagri tushni ila dupira samani kimax pagri takbira dupira salmi ae ana quicutela tapquida dupira salmi ae maigari tapska dupira salmani ae maiuscubete tushnila dupira salmi ae mabisha dun tapska dupira the salmi ae hangishpa tapkida dupira. May the mountain overpower you. May the mountain hold you back. May the mountain conquer you. May the mountain frighten you. May the mountain shake you to the core. May the mountain hold you in check. May the mountain subject you. May the mountain cover you. May the mighty mountain fall on you. May you be held back from my body. Note: the original translator had noted the resemblance between the Greek word for lord, curious, and the Sumerian word for mountain, Kur, and for a type of underworld chthonic monster, which is also called Kur, which refers to the Leviathan of the Old Testament, and also in this conjuration, the word for mountain is Shadu or Shaddai. The old serpent Kur is, of course, invoked every day by the Christians, Kyrie eleison. And I think for the last page that I'll read tonight, I'm going to read off some common Sumerian words and phrases, but in English. Akaru, vampire. Alal, destroyer. Alazul, evil god. Bara, begone. Dingirzul, evil god. Edenazu, go to the desert, a form of exorcism. Jalal, incubus. Jijimzul, evil spirit. Jidamzul, evil ghost. Idimu, demon. Idpa, fever. Kashvaptu, witch. Lalartu, phantom. Lalasu, spectre. Lilit, succubus. Mashkim, zul, evil fiend. Ambusher, lyre in wait. Malu, zul, evil demon. Rabishu, same as Maskim Zul. Telal, wicked demon. Uge, Uge, god of death. Uruku, larvae. Yutuk Zul, evil spirit. Zidingir Anakapa. Spirit, God of the sky, remember. Zidingir Giakanpa. Spirit of the earth, remember. That will be the final passage I read for tonight. I hope everybody has enjoyed this stream. It's nice to be able to read something akin to this.